Call to order. Whoever you may be, before we start, please check your mobile devices turn to silent, please, or switched off. As it tradition for public meetings and events to acknowledge country this evening, I will be using the acknowledgement developed with the Dunghutti people. Kempsey Shire Council acknowledges the land of the Dunghutti Nation. We pay respect to the elders past and present. Welcome everyone to our public forum. This coincides with the September meeting and relates to representation on agenda items and matters for the ordinary meeting of Council, which will be commenced tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. For this meeting, we have updated our COVID practices to conform with the current orders that are in place within New South Wales. The public gallery is limited to 19 and this forum is a hybrid meeting by Zoom. It is a requirement that I advise all present that the public forum is being live streamed and your attendance at this meeting is taken as consent to the possibility that your image and or voice will be recorded and broadcast to the public via our live stream. In the chambers this evening, we have Councillor McGinn, we have Councillor Saul, Councillor Baxter. The Mayor, Liz Campbell, will be joining us shortly. I'm Councillor Patterson and I'll be chairing the meeting until she arrives. Councillors joining the meeting by Zoom are Councillor Horville, Councillor Morris and Councillor Williams. And Councillor Shields has an apology for the meeting. She may be able to join us after 5. The Mayor has indicated she is on her way. If she does not arrive in time, she'll issue with an apology. I now call for any conflict of interest and declarations. Councillor McGinn.
Yes, thank you, Acting Chair. Non-significant, non-pecuniary for item 11.1 as I'm known to one of the parties.
Any more? No others. The General Manager will continue the guidelines for the public forum.
Good evening, everyone. Just outlined from the Code of Meeting Practice the requirements for the speakers. Mr. Pearson's already gone through these and pretty familiar with them, but I'll just do it for the public record. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes to address Council. We do enforce that time limit. Speakers at public forums must not digress from the item on the agenda. If they do digress, then the chairperson can direct the speaker to come back onto topic. And if they fail to observe that direction, they can be asked to return to their seat and no longer be heard. A councillor, including the chair, may, through the chairperson, ask questions of the speaker. Following an address, questions put to the speaker must be direct, succinct and without argument. Speakers are under no obligation to answer the questions. If they choose to answer the questions, they have a 1 minute time limit for the response. Speakers at public forums cannot ask questions of council, councillors or council staff. When addressing the council, speakers at public forums must comply with the code, this code and any other relevant codes of councils, and they must refrain from engaging in conduct that is disorderly, public alleging breaches of council's code of conduct or making potentially defamatory statements. If the chairperson considers a speaker at a public forum is engaged in any of the type of behaviour above, they can request that they refrain from the appropriate behaviour and unreservedly apologise. Back to you, Idris.
Thank you, General Manager Milburn. This evening we have one public forum speaker on item 9.3, question on notice. Resourcing and financial impacts. Dick Pearson will be speaking against the recommendation. Dick, would you like to come forward?
Is that on? Okay. Look, thanks for the opportunity to speak to council. I don't represent any particular group or groups. Obviously, I've been in conversation and email dialogue with a number of people that have suggested that there's a fair bit of community angst and suspicion in this particular agenda item. So I just put my hand up to speak. Look, the public perception out there is that this is an attempt to further limit transparency of council's activities, preventing councils from verbally asking questions in public. Unfortunately, people's perceptions are their reality, and that's just where we are. Core issues, again, transparency and openness is the main one. I draw an analogy to the Federal Parliament and the Speaker of the House and the Black Rod seeking to cease televising question time. Obviously, question time would continue, but it wouldn't be open and transparent to the public unless people wanted to track back through Hansard and try and find out what was happening. Quite often questions are more revealing than answers, and this appears to be what the proposal seeks to prevent in its current form. I must stress that, in its current form. The community deserves and is entitled to hear the questions, not just read about them after the event in minutes or agendas. Features of the proposal, restricting questions during council meetings to debating on agenda items. That's as it should be, I guess. That's pretty reasonable. The issue of diverting staff resources seems to be a little bit of a furphy. Councillors can still ask questions in writing, I believe, 8 days before the council meeting. So no change. There'd still be staff resources pulling together the answers. So I don't believe that is an excuse without an explanation as the potential cost for that to support the motion as it currently put. Other avenues are put forward for councillors to ask questions. Direct questions to the GM or staff, the council briefing sessions. That's all fine. They're not open to public scrutiny as such. We understand that, but these quite often questions to GM and council, I would imagine, would involve fairly benign day-to-day matters, and people don't need to be exposed to when are you going to fill that crack down in Smith Street. So the proposal does not stop councillors from putting questions in writing, but it does appear to stop these being asked verbally in public. The bottom line is, if what I've outlined above isn't the case, I would believe it up to the General Manager to explain why that's the case tomorrow morning. It appears contrary to the spirit of the General Manager's often public position that councillors are entitled and have every right to ask questions, and that's certainly so. But it seems to contravene or potentially contravene the spirit of that by not making questions and answers, or at least the questions, be heard in open public forum. So that's the guts of it. Sorry?
1 minute to go.
1 minute. Number of questions appear to be excessive. Yeah, perhaps council should look in the mirror and find out why that's the case. Obfuscating replies. Replies are not necessarily answers. I ask, what colour is council going to paint that wall there? You'd expect an answer red, green, blue, black, whatever. But you don't expect the answer along the lines of, council will paint that wall in line with council's approved colour palette. Public interest, sometimes that's legitimate. And if that is the case with questions asked, then if the answer can't be given, at least it needs an explanation as to why it's not in the public interest. Public scrutiny is essential. In its current form, this proposal will limit that scrutiny. The community has a right and deserves to know of the matters that concern their elected representatives, if not by oral articulation by way of questions at council meetings, then by what means? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. We have any questions to the speaker at all from councillors?
Thank you, Dick.
Councillor Baxter, yes?
Sorry, Chair. You just said it would limit the councillor's ability with scrutiny, but wouldn't a question presented like questions with notice with before the meeting, 8 days before the meeting, wouldn't there be just as much scrutiny in a question to staff that way? I mean, why does having it on tape make it more efficient than just asking the question before the meeting?
I wasn't talking about efficiency, I was talking about transparency. And I must admit I'm a little confused here. The current practice, as I see it, where at the end of council's agenda, councillors have the ability to ask questions verbally. They're taken down, responses are given at the next council meeting or sometimes thereafter. If that is what is being proposed to cease, that's the nub of the issue for people.
It is. It is.
I know of other councils that questions are put by the public to council and they're read out by the general manager or the chair. So the main thing is that people get to see and hear what's that their representatives are concerned about.
Well, can I ask you another question, Dick? If during that seeing the verbal questions at the end of the meeting, if a certain person or councillors breach the code of conduct and ask questions that are out of order and defamatory or impugn the character of certain members of the council, how do you retract that? How is that slur, that defamation, taken away if the bucket's already thrown? It's hard to take it back, isn't it?
Yes, but I'm not completely au fait with code of meeting practice, and certainly issues of defamation and slurring or whatever. I think even the GM alluded to that for public presenters. I would imagine the code of conduct has provisions to insist on an apology from any councillor that's making that nature of question.
Exactly. But do you believe that sometimes a certain amount of mud sticks? There's that old proverb, you throw enough mud and some of it sticks. Do you believe in that proverb?
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. Yeah, personally, I understand that.
Can I give you an example?
I venture to say that mud can often be thrown both ways.
Councillor Baxter, you need to ask a question.
Yes, sorry. Well, that was the question. Yeah. Does he believe in that proverb? Thank you, Dick.
Yeah. Have we any more questions for Mr. Pearson? No? Thank you, Mr. Pearson, for speaking today.
Look forward to an interesting debate tomorrow. Thank you.
That ends this part of the meeting. We're just going to have a couple of minutes break and we'll be back.